Okay, Qusai, let me just welcome you here to our Center for Middle East Studies. It's a huge honor to have you with us today, given what you experienced in Syria over the last 3 years. I want to just ask you some just general questions about your background first, because most people watching this interview may not know the details of your background. Could you just tell me a little bit about your background? Where were you born and where were you raised?
Well, first of all, it's an honor, pleasure of mine to be here talking to you, and also in Denver University as well. Before the revolution, I was working in Four Seasons Damascus Hotel, and also studying English translations in Homs. I come from a big family. We're 10 brothers and a sister. My father passed away in 1999, so all of us had a big family gathering all the time. All of us had to work and to support each other and to have a better chance in life. But I was just like the other ordinary Syrians and Palestinian Syrians in Syria. We all lived in constant a state of fear of getting captured or killed by the Assad regime at any second. Personally, I got arrested 3 times by the Assad forces
Before the Arab Spring?
Before the Arab Spring.
Why did they arrest you?
For nothing. Just intelligent patrol, rolling in the street. They didn't just like the way that I looked. Sometimes they were drunk. They arrested me, they beat the crap out of me, and just let me go. And everybody tells me that I was always lucky that they let me go. They never got me to prison. So this is something that...
Okay, so where were you when the Arab Spring began in Tunisia?
Yeah.
You know, what were people in Syria thinking and feeling when you saw this series of demonstrations? Ben Ali is toppled, then Egypt, Mubarak is toppled, and Libya, Gaddafi is about to be toppled. You know, what were people in Syria thinking as the Arab Spring started to spread, you know, eastward?
Well, to be honest, it was always like a pink fantasy for us to see political change in Syria after 4 decades of a brutal ruling by the Assad family. But none of us was expecting to see that happening in Syria.
Well, this is one of the questions I have. Many people said that, look, Assad is just too brutal of a ruler. People are too scared. They won't come on the street. Many people said that Syria is different. Tunisia, yes, you can have a revolution. Egypt, you know, Libya maybe, but Syria. So how was it that people came into the streets in 3 years ago, in March of 2011, and overcame their fear? How did that happen? Was it something that, you know, happened spontaneously? Was there organizing? Did someone tell you to come on the streets? Could you give us a bit of the flavor of what was happening in Syria at that time?
Well, at that time, it only took the spark coming from Daraa, when we saw the children writing the lines of freedom on the walls. So we started asking each other, could have been that these small children are more braver than us? And I remember talking to a lot of friends of mine, and we were always questioning and asking ourselves, can we do it? Can we go to the streets? And because, like he said, we know the true nature of the Assad regime. Personally, I had to keep a very low profile since the very beginning. And not even my closest friends knew that I was going into the demonstrations. First of all, to protect my family, and second of all, to protect myself.
So you were scared if they knew you were demonstrating, the regime will attack you or your family?
They will attack my family with no hesitation.
Arrest them as a way of putting pressure on you?
Yes, this is something that they did during the Syrian revolution. So most of the demonstrations started, for example, in Mu'adamiyah, by gathering in the streets. Sometimes we call each other, and when we tell our families that we're going to a soccer game or something like this, because they will have a lot of fears, they won't let us to go out if they knew we were going to a demonstration. So we had to, every once and then, come up with tricks to be in the streets and to start the demonstration, and then the demonstration will become bigger and bigger while we were walking in the town, because people will get more encouraged to see real people, people they know in the middle of the street demonstrating against the Assad regime. That encouraged people a lot.
So what do you say to people? There's many people here in the United States. They're on the left of the political spectrum. They support the struggle for democracy in Syria, but they say that it was wrong for the people of Syria to abandon nonviolence, that they should have continued to demonstrate, and to take up arms was a bad strategic decision. What would you like to say to those people?
I would like to tell them that in a way you are right. We knew that the regime was pushing us very badly to have weapons so he can come up with excuses to use more firepower on the peaceful demonstrations and on the civilians in Syria. But imagine yourself living in a town while the intelligence patrols during 8 months is coming inside of the town, arresting people, humiliate them, making field executions in the middle of the streets, raping women in front of their families for over 8 months, and you're just sitting there doing nothing, and nobody seemed and nobody did anything to help us to protect our families or the peaceful demonstrations. So at the end, we're not angels, we're humans, and humans can reach a point that we just won't take more, and they will say that's enough. And this is what happened, and personally I think the regime managed to win. He succeeded with his plan in pushing people to have weapons. None of us wanted since day one to see any kind of armed conflict in Syria, but this is something we were forced to do. We weren't planning or
Okay, well, going back, if you could go back 3 years, knowing what has happened now with the violence and the chaos and the killing, would you have tried to still stick to a non-violent agenda for a bit longer, or do you have the opinion now that we had no choice? If we could go back, we still had to take up arms because of the brutality of the Assad regime?
I will say that we have no choice. We didn't have a choice. And I will say again, we didn't ever had a choice. We were stuck in a basement with a lot of savage killers waiting outside of the door. And they were just doing everything they can to kill and rape and torture for people for endless times. We had to do that. We had to protect ourselves.
Okay, now you miraculously survived the August 21st chemical weapons attack that the Assad regime launched on its own civilians. When you come, now that you've left Syria, and you come to the United States and you hear many people, particularly those on the left, like Seymour Hersh and many sort of left-wing so-called peace groups, saying that, look, we really don't know who launched these chemical attacks. Maybe it was the opposition who did it. Maybe it was Turkey who played a role. Maybe Assad is not guilty. How does that make you feel, given that you are a survivor of a chemical weapons attack of sarin gas that almost killed you? Could you share with our viewers how you feel as a person listening to these types of attempts to downplay and remove Assad from any guilt in perpetrating that atrocity?
To be very honest with you, whenever I hear such stories coming from Seymour Hersh or somebody like him about their conspiracy theories, and they're just trying to poison the truth, I feel very upset and disappointed, sometimes disgusted to hear such stories, because all the world knows that Bashar al-Assad used the chemical weapons. The United Nations Weapons Inspectors team came into Muaddamiyah, into Eastern Ghouta. They examined patients and evidence and rockets and crashing zones, and they wrote in the report, and they said the rockets were fired from pro-regime held areas. And this is evidence that proves that the regime who launched the chemical attacks. And also, anybody who doesn't have information about how complicated it is to have chemical weapons and how to launch them.
Mhm.
It's like you're saying that a space rocket was fired from McDonald's instead of having NASA doing the
Right.
space rocket.
Okay.
So it will take a lot of technology and equipment, and
Yeah.
only regime have it, and only the regime have the chemical weapons,
Right.
and they started handing over the weapons after the attack.
Right. How about today? What would you say that most Syrian people want from the international community, from the United States? You know, if you could sort of have an opportunity to speak to a group of Americans, elected officials and just normal average Americans, what would you like to tell them in terms of how best the United States and the international community can help stop the conflict in Syria?
Well, I can start by saying that I've been amazed by the American people since I arrived to the United States. Whenever I'm speaking to or talking to anybody about what's really going on inside of Syria, they show a lot of sympathy and understanding, and they just rush and start asking for help. How can we help more? What I want to see is at least show some kinds of consequences for the Assad regime on using chemical weapons, starving his own people to death. We're asking for taking away the Assad's ability on throwing barrel bombs on the civilian population, using MiG fighters, Scud missiles, all this terrifying ways of death that the Assad regime is using against its people. And also to have more support for the Syrian army who's fighting both of the Assad regime and Al-Qaeda at the same time. The Assad regime helped Al-Qaeda to be based in Syria so they can terrify people between two options. Either you will have the Assad regime or you will have Al-Qaeda and their chaos in Syria. And not right now the Syrian army is fighting both of them. And we're asking for support and respect for the Syrian people and the Syrian revolution. It's a noble cause and it deserves all your support and your attention.
Okay, one final question. What's your vision for a future Syria? If you could sort of envision, if you had the power to create a political system for a future post-Assad Syria, what would it look like?
It will be very simple and beautiful at the same time. It will be a free Syria and Syria for all. And I think that says all. And we want Syria to be for all Syrians, for Christians and Muslims and Kurds, different kind of religious and ethnic groups. They're all a part of Syria. Even as a Palestinian Syrian, I would like to see some kind of future also for the Palestinian Syrians in Syria and building Syria, because we've been living there since over 70 years. We've born there, we have all our friends, our families in here, and we want to see Syria getting what it deserves, to have a freedom of choice, to have the luxury of being safe and living in dignity, making your own choices and having a good life. This is what I want to see in Syria.
Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so
Good
much.
luck. Thank you.